Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. You join me in my kitchen. We haven't got that much to talk about. There's always exciting stuff. There's always news to talk about.
There's Formula One news, especially. There's Lewis crashing.
Yeah.
There's Newey engine regulations are going to be dominant, and there's
rear wing.
Herbert, wing changes. So there's quite a lot of Formula One news to discuss, starting with Lewis.
Well, it wasn't really a crash, was it? It was with all motor racing. When you're pushing, you're trying a new car.
It was a bump, I'm told. And if it was a bump, they'll flatten it out. This is what drives me mad about. I always think with these bumpy tracks, they're motorlocks. They've got no ride height. They're hitting the ground. But they should have to survive bumps. And if you know there's a bump there, then in your testing sessions, you'd work out a suspension setup that means you can take the bump every lap and not crash. So hopefully they'll leave the bump.
We've just been with Kyle Ryde and Tommy Bridewell on motorbikes, British Superbike champions, and they were talking about bumps. And of course, it's accentuated so much more on a bike than it is in a car. But you're right. You drive to the track, whatever you know the track.
It was quite interesting what they said was because the MotoGP boys that have smooth circuits, they don't like bumps either. And you'll see them, their whole bodies are off the bike when they're getting that lean. And Carl, he said you can't do that in a superbike because if you hit a bump when your body's so far off the bike, you'll just go down. So it's quite interesting that I didn't realise that the British tracks are that bumpy. But yeah, all the big MotoGP tracks have to be smooth.
So the most experienced man in Formula One didn't know about a bump and crashed.
Well, yeah. He must have been over the bump about 100 times and then it caused a crash.
Right, what else? Adrian Newey.
Yeah.
I saw him last week.
I love this. I think it's just tongue-in-cheek and he's quickly... We all think this anyway, that someone's going to do a brawn with their engines. Like Mercedes
Somebody will. There's no question. In 2026, somebody will just have a slight advantage or make a huge difference to the championship.
But he's virtually saying it doesn't matter how good I am, if the Honda engine doesn't work, the Aston Martin won't be winning races. So it was a clever tongue-in-cheek, but he also was telling the truth, I think. It is going to be... I mean, we just have to enjoy this year so much because it's going to be such...
wait.
Well, except they've introduced this flexi wing thing.
But how can they change things so late now? Surely,
no idea.
Surely all the teams have done their wind tunnel testing and development and everything.
So they got this budget cap. Well, this means now they're forcing to change, flexi wing. And if you change your flexi wing, you've probably got to change the rear wing and you've probably got to change the underbody because everything affects everything else. So there's going to be a cost implication. So they're trying to keep budgets down. And this formula ends at the end of the season. So why muck about with it at such a last minute? And I think they're worried that one team's going to run away with the first 5-6 races because they've got better flexi wings and they think they're going to balance in making
it's a complete opposite. It ended 2024 so even, with the four manufacturers so even.
And the others have flexed up their wings to catch up. So it's just crazy.
I'm not a fan of that, I'll be honest with you. Is that derivative coming from the FIA?
Yeah. I don't know, meddling when they don't need to meddle. I mean, this whole...
They love
FIA,
to meddle. Oh, well,
Mr.
Johnny Herbert
is going to be re-elected. Nobody seems to be challenging Suleiman to be the new president. So he's going to have a dominant force. He's running it. He does what he wants to do. They brought out this the swearing. They haven't dropped it. They've almost increased it with these huge fines and... I mean, some of the foreign-speaking drivers, the F word, it's not a bad swear word.
It's expressing themselves
in a
frustrating
word that they've heard. So that's kind of crazy. And then the next thing is we got the driver's stewards. So Johnny Herbert's been dropped. We all love Johnny because I think Johnny was dropped from Sky because he says what he thinks. You notice Sky...
He was the only one out of all the Sky guys that was honest about Abu Dhabi 2021.
Yeah. Whereas Martin Brundle was very on the fence, well, we don't know all the details, sat back, the stewards, we haven't got all the features. And Johnny says what he thinks. And now, they're looking at this whole steward thing, and they're now deciding that, who came up with this idea? I don't know, someone must have turned a little screw. Well, Johnny Herbert says things on gambling websites, so he can't be a steward. Well, why not? I mean, you have to have drivers as stewards. They're all voluntary, which makes it... I mean, I think that's wrong.
I'm astonished at that. Well, Zach Brown came out and said that they should be paying towards the stewards, which good respect to him.
But probably the likes of Johnny Herbert and others that go to the Grand Prix, they probably, when they're there, earn on the side, doing their punditry for whoever or their gambling companies. So you get an expenses paid trip to be a steward, which is really good if you're a racing driver to the steward. And they probably do earn a bit on the side. So if you cut out their
very few stewards would be earning a bit on the side. Most of them would be just doing it for the love of the sport.
The love of the sport.
Like they do with club racing, but on a much bigger scale. But how can you afford to go to 24 Grand Prix in a year?
Well,
all over the world as a steward?
Expensive. I suppose if you're fully retired and minted up, you can do it. But, I mean, the most famous drivers don't do it. So it's been sort of the medium famous drivers that are there. Well, Derek Warwick, they're all pretty famous. But it's just, they're now going to have a paid stewards. But they have to like report on Monday after the race and get together and have a meeting. But so you won't get drivers unless you're paying, 300 grand or something to commit to the whole year. And we'll end up where football is. We're both big football fans. Football fans hate VAR. They go VAR crazy because you've got these umpires deciding things.
Referees.
Yeah, same thing. Which, when you get to match the day, the footballers look at it and say, well, obviously that's not a foul. Toby's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's just tapped him and he's gone down. Because the footballers know the tricks that footballers play. Whereas the referees don't have that inside brain, so they just come with a monotonous sort of, I think the regulation was broken by a millimetre.
So that's the point you're making, is that you need to have experience of playing the game at or competing at the highest level to be able to adjudicate.
On these two sports where these regulations are so easily crossed over, the regulations...
You do a slow-mo and it looks completely different.
Yeah.
The turn-in looks different on a slow-mo than it does in real life. So yeah, I'm
so
with
who
you.
are we going to get to be these stewards?
Well, I know someone.
Me? I'll be there. I'll
But
go.
joking aside, you would be because you don't need experience in modern day Formula One. That would be a benefit. So Ann Davison would be the most incredible steward ever, but you never get Ann away from doing his amazing job with Sky. But yeah, someone like you, someone that knows it and doesn't have the wool pulled over their eyes easily.
But trouble is, if you put the footballer in the VAR room, he'd try and persuade the two officials. No, mate, it doesn't work like that. He's just touched him.
The rules are.
And the rules are. And there's 2-1 probably. So the two officials, the rules are. But I mean, apparently Christian Horner has supported the FA on this because Johnny Herbert, of course, was someone that put Verstappen penalised twice in one race, I think. So I don't know. The trouble with Formula One is there are grudges that are born, aren't there, from way back, and people carry those grudges through. And
well, again, with Kyle and Tommy today, Tommy's got a real grudge with Glenn Irwin. They've got a proper grudge. We're going to have to cut half the stuff that was said, actually, but. Yeah, there are grudges, but not few and far between. But I can imagine Christian Horner, I don't know him and he's done a phenomenal job, but I can imagine he is one to hold a grudge.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Can we not drop Johnny Herbert off the stewards list? I don't know how many others there are known. I know Derek Warwick and Johnny Herbert. There's Luzzi, who's an Italian driver that didn't get very far. I don't know who else are the drivers that are doing it, but I think you have to have a driver there. But how we're going to make that happen with permanent stewards? And where are all these permanent stewards? Well, I suppose you only need 5 to go around the world for a whole year, don't you?
Yeah, I think you would get a lot of people, like you said, made a few quid perhaps, not even made a few quid where you're semi-retired or...
I'll go. I'll go.
What's next?
Well, just racing last weekend.
Well,
the Grosvenor Awards we got on our list, which you were at.
Well, they're not at the Grosvenor. Cool. So Autosport Awards, where
I won the Grosvenor Award, 1976. I got £1,000. I was the top young British driver of 1976.
So it's quite funny because David Coulthard stood up and said, I was the first person to ever win this award back 35 years ago. And he's quite funny. He said effectively he only won it because Bernie was his godfather. And Bernie said, I'll give it to David, DC.
It was an important award for me, as it was for this year's.
But it's the same award, but different name.
Yeah, but it got me a professional drive. I mean, I was a civil engineer 5 days a week, a racing driver at weekends when I won this award. And it got me the publicity and it got me professional Formula 3 drives.
Amazing.
I became a retired civil engineer.
Absolutely amazing. And good for you as well. He shows what level
only £1,000. They get 200 grand nowadays.
Yeah, 200 grand. And it was a brilliant night. So they changed the location. It used to be at the Grosvenor House. It's changed for the first year to the Camden Roundhouse, which has had Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan.
I went there.
Have you?
When I was 18, 19, watched some bands.
Yeah, it
Roundhouse.
was really cool place and very well done, I have to say. Autosport did a super job there. Very well done.
Surprise winner.
Yeah, well, let me tell you a little bit about it before you go on to the winner, because it was a bit of a surprise winner, but it was good. They had a tribute to Bernie Ecclestone, 75 years of Formula One, and it was really, really good. I mean, you've got everybody.
What is he, 92 now? Or
yeah,
something?
so you're 72, Derek Bell's 82, and all within 3 days, a decade and 3 days.
All Scorpions.
Yeah, and it was really good. Very interesting to see all the different these heroes of motorsport. Jake Hill, BTCC, and. They didn't do 2 wheels. They didn't.
Bikes don't count.
No, just 4 wheels. Gosh. But then, look, we are massive fans and advocates of ladies in motor racing. We're huge fans and big supporters. But it was unproportional and almost awkward how much time they spent on the ladies.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, it was 20 minutes.
What?
And they went and they relived. So Susie was there, great, and everybody flying the flag, fantastic. But they went through 3rd place of the F1 Academy.
Well, they bought 3rd and 2nd.
3rd and 2nd, and then they had a speech with everyone, whereas with each person that came up and won an award, it was a quick, Jake Hill, what was it like? Yeah, great, thanks very much. And that was it. But with the girls, it just went on and on and on. It was really quite...
I think they do over-promote it.
It was, and that's the problem. They're over-promoting and they don't need to over-promote it because it's such a, it's a great formula, and if it brings more girls into motorsport, amazing. But it just seemed... it's just a bit awkward, really. But Abby Pullen was amazing. They're all amazing, these girls.
They're all trained up to be ambassadors, and they're
all these youngsters now. Wow, they're good on.
Abby's got the big GB3. I mean, everyone's going GB3. This is the championship. I can't wait to follow GB3. So this will be when we really see Abby and support her, and she wins that. Then she really is a talent for the future. But it's.
Let me tell you, Abby's words were that she's going to mix it up with the boys and be at the front, and she's going to be there. But she's got a tough job. There's a lot of incredibly talented people, her included.
Dorian Pan and Maya Wurg.
Yep.
Pronunciation. Hope I got close. They're doing it again. They've got another 3 year of racing, going around the world. Not like the young boys that are desperate trying to find sponsors. And I think Maya Wood, she was the Ferrari Academy driver at least 4 years ago. She's been doing Formula 4s and of course last year's champion Marta Garcia. She had her free season was in Freca, Formula Renault Europe, and she couldn't get out of the top 20. So there is still a huge. If you look at the facts, sadly, there is still a huge gap between the best women and the best young boys. And I think we could over-promote them at the moment.
Well, I guess their argument is the more promotion they get, the better. But it was just... And Autosport did say, we're going to make this much shorter and leaner this year, but it still went on, still went over time. But the Bernie thing was fantastic. The whole thing was fantastic, seeing so many...
The point is that it was an internal event with the girls. Whereas an external event... and the actual academy races, you're telling the whole world, young girls, have a go at kart racing. You could be a female racing driver. But this was just an in-house. It wasn't programmed. It wasn't sent out around the world, was it?
No,
it wasn't filmed. No.
Strange. Very odd. You should go because I know that you presented it a couple of times, hosted it a couple of times. Yeah. They traded you in for Dermot O'Leary this year. Dermot O'Leary. And Lee McKenzie, who's amazing.
Yeah, Lee's very good. I worked with her before.
But great awards. But you should go just as a punter because it is, you're walking around and you got Martin Brundle, Bernie Ecclestone, and Damon Hill, and all these people that you've watched for years. Well, your mates, but all these people. But you should go one year. Next year as a punter, it'd be good.
I used to go regularly, but it's the same old thing, same old same. The winners are always the same. Racing car of the year. Was it the McLaren? I expect.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not going to... I mean, it was a little bit funny at the beginning. You walk in this beautiful event and you see these sponsors as you walk in everywhere, their sponsors' logos. The first 3 awards that were won were all their sponsors. The best beer that's non-alcoholic that's advertised on a car is. And the best tyres are, guess who? But we've all got to pay bills.
What was the best car? McLaren?
Yeah.
Best national driver, Jake Hill?
Yeah.
Best international driver, Lando.
Max Verstappen.
International. You have a best British driver.
Lando.
Lando.
Max won 2.
Best car. Best rally car, Toyota. Did I have that best rally car again?
Yeah.
It's always so predictable.
Oh,
Welcome back to the Amateur Dramatic Society of Podcasts. With him, Paul Woodman, who makes the mess, and me, the professional that isn't getting paid.
we need a sponsor. We need proper gear and kit. So for those listening on Spotify, because we are on Spotify, the phone is taped to some light and with sellotape.
Not with gaffer tape or something strong.
But we got labs, so the audio should be good today. For once, the audio should be good. So we've got labs on. But yeah, welcome to the professional podcast of the year.
Where, having talked through the predictable winners of the Autosport Awards, also BRD, I should put the BRDC words because there's the great club that I'm a proud member of, which organises the event. We got to the actual winner of the most important award.
I just want to mention one other person or brand or company was TSL, because they got a mention, and I was really pleased because TSL, if those of you that don't know what it is, Timing Solutions Limited.
Solutions,
tremendous. If you want to know anything, we wanted to do some research last night on the boys
Results.
A couple of years ago, a result, and everything's there. TSL are phenomenal in motorsport.
With Formula Scout mentioned, I want to put a thumbs up for Formula Scout because they bring me all the results from all the single-seater Middle East, Formula 4, Formula Regional, Formula 4, Formula Regional Oceania. It's so good.
So the winners.
So yeah, the winners. So the winners. Whereas all the main winners were predictable, the actual winner of the Drivers' Award was a surprise because this young 16-year-old kid, Deagan Fairclough, won it.
No, he's 18.
Oh, he's 18.
Yeah,
so
Freddie's
16 is
16.
Freddie's 16. Because this was up against Freddie Slater, who's been winning everything, which we mentioned on this podcast for many times. We've become big Freddie Slater fans. Who's already got his drive sorted with Formula Regional Frecker. Arvin Lindblad, he's doing Formula 2 next year, already got his drive. These are two really highly touted drivers that have been winning all over the world already in their lives. In fact, Arvin's now down under in New Zealand, winning the New Zealand Formula Renault, it's not Formula Renault, I can put Renault, it's Frecker, Formula Regional Oceania. And I found out only today I was looking at any more news, and the main reason he's down there is to get super license points.
Right.
So literally, he's dominated the series. His talent is way better than anybody else. He's almost gone down there just to pick up more super license points. And the third one was Louis Sharp, who won the GB3 Championship. He's a Kiwi, but he's backed by the Kiwi, the Rodin man.
Yeah.
And so he's got his money already. He's doing Formula 3. So you
have to those three are quite well funded.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. Maybe that helped Deagan win it because Deagan's had very little money. I mean, goodness sake, 2 years ago, he was doing Junior Saloon Car Championships. I don't know if it was a Fiesta or I don't know what he was in. And then he enters a sim racing competition sponsored by, get it right, Rokit, sponsored by Rokit. Wins this sim racing, and Rokit then put him in a Formula 4 car for one season only. And he did so well in the one season, they gave him a second season, he's dominated Formula 4. So it's a wonderful story from a very underfunded young driver. And he has got his GB3 drive, again, another GB3, Abby pulling to try and beat it. It's a fantastic GB3, because even Freddie's coming back. Freddie Slater's going to do some GB3 races when they don't clash with his Frecker stuff. So it's going to be a fascinating year next year. So I think, because you would have thought Louis Sharp or Arvin, or any of them, would have been better than Deagan, because they've got so much experience. Because they go into an LMP3 car, don't they, in a saloon car.
They don't do a saloon car, they do LMP, they do a GT, and they do a single-seater.
That's right, GT3 car.
At Silverstone for a couple of days.
And so you have to believe that they were all so close. I have to believe myself, because I know how good Freddie is, I've admired his drive for so long, that it was almost a tie. And like Deagan's won it on a tiebreaker, because the one that needed it most, maybe.
See, it's interesting, because I thought it was down to who won that Silverstone thing, but apparently it's about how they conduct themselves as well, and
it's all about
the whole package. Because Deagan stood up and said, I might not have been the fastest at Silverstone, but...
Okay, it is it always annoys me, to be honest, when they have some of these competitions to sort of go into a sim or go into a test day. People run these little background competitions, don't they? And one of the things is always fitness, to drive 10 laps in a Formula Ford race. I didn't do any fitness for 5 years. And I often wonder sometimes now, because now I know, because weight was nothing. In the 1970s in Formula Ford, nobody thought about weight. We just didn't think about weight. and we didn't get trained or anything. And I've realised now that if I'd been fitter, because I didn't do any fitness training, weighed less, all right, had a personal trainer, a psychologist, I don't know what else I would have done. Many of these
Nutritionist.
a nutritionist. Instead of having a pint of bitter the night before a race, instead of winning my championships, winning races, with fastest lap, I'd have win by 2 seconds. I'd have won them by about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
The stuff they make kids do. In fact, I saw someone on Twitter say, can you advise me on how fit I need to start racing? You don't. You really don't. Just have a go and see how you get on.
But it's completely different back in your day, because in your day, cars got boiling hot with all your ovals, so you don't get that
We were
nowadays.
just knackered. Yeah. But anyway, congratulations to Deagan. I may be slightly thinking, amazing, but if you did actually beat them on the track, well, you said he didn't beat them on the track.
Well, he said he might not have been the quickest.
Okay.
So it didn't confirm whether he was...
But the main thing is it's brilliant publicity for Deagan, and that's what this award's mainly for me is all about. It's not so much about, who's got the most talent, it's who we can help forwards.
What a lovely lad. I mean, he wasn't my... I wanted Freddie to win because I'm a fan of and a friend of Freddie, but be honest with you, but I was really surprised he was the least... I thought he was the least likely to win it out of the three.
Yeah.
Out of the four, sorry. But what a lovely lad. He won a new fan with me on the night, his acceptance speech, and he's in tears, and his family. Lovely, lovely lad, and congratulations. I hope you have a long and successful career.
I was provided my award by James Hunt.
Were you?
Yes.
Wow.
James Hunt. Me.
Well, that's funny you should mention that, because no drivers were there. Not a single Formula 1 driver. Kimi Antonelli, he was the only one that was there. Kimi Antonelli, here's a nice fact with him. So he's 18, he's driving for Mercedes Formula 1 team, and he's only just passed his driving test last week. How funny is that? But he was the
I'm
only
not sure
Formula...
how he's going to go, Kimi. I really don't know. They can either go pear-shaped and he'll crash a lot, or he can be brilliant.
No, I think he'll be Mr. Consistent. I don't think he'll set the world on fire. Liam Lawson's one for me. I've seen some interviews with him. He's quite confident, that young lad.
Yeah, I'd like to see him not do so well.
It's just, I don't know, maybe it's just trying a little bit too hard, because he's only a young lad and we judge...
Yuki, I wanted Yuki to get that drive. I think he's worked so hard and he's calmed himself down.
Yeah,
He's
but
done what people
Max
wanted
didn't want Yuki to get the drive, did he?
Well, I'm hoping Yuki will get into... Because the other thing you talk about mid-season is this thing with poor old... in the Alpine...
Gasly.
They've suddenly brought in Colapinto, who's obviously got money behind him, because they had to buy Colapinto out of his Williams contract. And I think everyone was looking not so much at Colapinto being brilliant, but being a very good, steady pair of hands, but the Argentinian money was suddenly being promised left, right and centre. And I feel really sorry for Doohan, who's got to start this season with Colapinto in the garage with his cans on and his Argentinian sponsors queuing up to get him out.
Well, I hope
Doohan stays in, and Lawson drops out to give Yuki half a season.
I don't think that's going to happen. Certainly not with Lawson. But going to Mexico City, it made me realise, one, there's a lot of money there, and two, I know that's Central America, but we need South Americans, we need people from that continent racing. So, and there is a lot of money there.
Yep.
Right, what about proper racing? There's
Bathurst. 2 events last weekend, major international. Bathurst. I say Bath.
Bathurst?
So I say Bath, because I'm English when I say Bath, and not Bath. And yet I think it's not Bathurst, it's Bathurst.
Okay.
The 12-hour is the World Challenge Endurance Championship. Only about 22 cars went this year, down from about 29. But still, I mean, just so spectacular. I was watching one of the Saturday nights, because the race starts on Sunday morning in Australia. If you didn't see it, you don't watch my tweets, you don't respond to my tweets. Well, I tell you, watch now. Because it's the most incredible... They start the race an hour before dawn, and as they're going over the mountain, this most magical racetrack, the red sky glows on the horizon.
It's beautiful.
It's just stunning.
So for those who don't know Bathurst, it's very undulating. It's very narrow. Wow.
Yeah, well, you can't overtake. It's one of those tracks. There are so many tracks where the drivers love, like Suzuka or the Nürburgring or Bathurst. And you can't overtake for half the lap. Well, no, for 90% of the lap, you can't overtake.
One overtaking point, yeah.
And there was one driver in the early hour or so, they put a bronze driver in, because they're not all pro classes, some of the pro-am class, so there's 3 or 4 different classes as normal in GT racing. But you know, they had a bronze driver in a Porsche that started 9th, where his pro had qualified him, so he was up the grid. And there was the first 8 pulled away about a second a lap.
I saw that.
And then everyone from 10th backwards was stuck behind this very, very good AM in a Porsche.
He was very good, but he was just so off the pace with the pros, but no one could get past him.
No.
So the big train behind him.
So then you realise if pros are racing pros, I mean, there's just virtually no chance of overtaking for every lap. So it all comes to pit stops and strategy. And that's always a slightly disappointing when I see people being held up and can't overtake because of the circuit design.
Yeah, I agree.
But
What's the perfect circuit? What's the perfect circuit now? Modern circuit.
Well, you can't throw that at me. But what you need is
I am throwing at you.
3 reasonable straights with a corner at the end of each of them. So you get 3
tell me,
overtaking
what's the
opportunities a lap.
perfect circuit now for modern motorsport?
Questions he asks me.
Le Mans?
Middle of nowhere.
Le Mans?
Well, Le Mans obviously you can overtake in several places.
Yeah.
Suzuka nowhere. Silverstone's 2 or 3 spots a lap.
Yeah.
With DRS, so that's not real overtaking.
Yeah, but I'm talking of GTs and LMPs.
And Monza, it's just almost there because of aero and no slipstream. This is one of my ideas is with the single-seater Formula, they ought to put these Hanford devices on them. If it was one make, Mr. Hanford sorted out IndyCar about 20 years ago, but it gave so much tow, they're all just driving past each other. But a little bit of something like that instead of DRS, which gives slipstream. Because now with all the aero, there is no slipstream. You see them sitting beyond the straight, and there's no forward pull because the air's all discombobulated.
I love that word.
Whatever it is.
Discombobulated. So,
fabulous to watch. Some great race, lots of strategy, good commentary by Mr. John Hindhoff and his team doing their commentary. Of course, they did Hindhoff's come from Daytona 24 hours to Bathurst 12 hours. I think he's doing World Sports Cars next. Amazing. So, John, you never watch our podcast, but great work he does.
Well, I was with Harry Benjamin at the Autosport Awards. He watches our podcast.
Oh, good.
Harry Benjamin does Sky Sports and Radio 5 Live.
So an epic race that turned to strategy. In the end, it was the BMWs that did a fuel strategy. They changed the rules. Last year, you had to stop after 26 or a certain number of laps. You weren't allowed to go longer. And BMW somehow got into a better fuel consumption way, and so managed to stretch another couple of laps. And they just really had a huge fuel economy run for the last hour or two and finished first and second. With Mr. Valentino Rossi in the second place BMW. So BMW
they were very unlucky at Daytona as well, actually, BMW.
There was a lot of banging and barging, wasn't there?
Exactly.
That was great
I'm
stuff.
surprised there's so few cars there. Was that less than 30 cars?
Well, it's a European-based championship. Most of the drivers and teams all come from Europe, so it's a long way, long haul, expensive budget, budget race.
But the BSB boys, are going down to Phillip Island for British Superbikes. Is that right?
Yeah, but no. They talked about Phillip Island, but they're not racing. They're British Superbikes.
I think they said that was their first race of the season. We'll have to fact check that one. Can't fact check on my phone at the moment because it's currently held together with sellotape recording this podcast.
It's not next weekend, that's for sure. I haven't got my famous calendar with me.
Amateur. I'm working with amateurs, right? Some Coliseum thing, wasn't it? Some
NASCAR. Well, NASCAR now open with their Bud Challenge, or I think it's called the Bud Challenge. I forget what it's called now. But it used to be on a proper oval 5 or 6 years ago, a proper race. And it's only the top 23 drivers that got the points from last year or something like that. I don't know how you qualify. But then they decided to have this sort of Coliseum race around a 1/8 of a mile. It looked ridiculous because they were just bumper to bumper. And they had that for about 3 years, and it was a bit ridiculous. But now they've gone to this track last weekend, the Bowman Gray quarter mile. And this was an old NASCAR track when, like 1958, Petty was winning it. It was one of the original NASCAR tracks, only a quarter of a mile. And really, a quarter of a mile is too short for modern day NASCAR, these big cars. But they decided to go to the road Bowman Gray. A lovely little story. I've got his name somewhere. We'll start the story. Haven't got it. No, there he is. A lovely little story. They managed to get a ride in a car for the Bowman Gray Superstar Champion, a guy called Tim Brown. He's 53 years old. And he's won so many championships with the little Bowman Gray tracks.
He's won there at the circuit. He's like the local resident.
He's a local hero. And so they got him a ride. I mean, he finished last in the heat, but, you know, he didn't get far. But just to give that opportunity.
But that just goes to show how hard it is against these professional drivers, because you've got someone that knows the circuit inside out, knows every single bump and lump, and he's miles at the back, wasn't he?
But it looked chaos. There were 4 heats of about 12 cars each. No, can't be that. 4 heats of 8 cars each.
Doesn't he look like your typical NASCAR driver?
He had the big belly at the press. I saw the interview of Mr. Brown. They said, "You've been in a few fights here, haven't you?" And he said, "You imagine this in Formula One where they can't even swear." Well, yeah, I had a few fights. How many? The interviewer said, "Oh, about 10 or 12, you know."
Like fist fights?
Yeah. And he said, "But I won most of them." And you imagine that actual fist fights. But ice hockey seems to be a sport where they get away with fighting. And
Yeah.
But he said, well, you know, he explained it. He said, I prepare my cars immaculately. I spend all my money. I've got no budget, but I spend hours, and my cars are pristine, you know. And if some boy makes a mark on them, I'll make a mark on them. This is the oldie world NASCAR. But the racing was chaos. I mean, they were pushing and shoving because they had 4 heats. And the top 5 went through automatic to the final race.
So obviously number 5, Carl Larson, went through.
Well, no, not actually didn't. No. But the last lap, the sort of 5th and 6th were just pushing each other into the wall just to get 5th. And Larson didn't get through, and he had to go to the what they call it, the last chance race. So the Sunday morning, I think they had a 75 lap last chance race, where only the first 2 got through out of the 20 cars in that field. Larson somehow got through. I'm not sure he got the first 2. There's also first 2. Plus best point scorer that hadn't yet qualified. So maybe Larson got through on that. But I didn't see the fight. It wasn't on television. We're hoping that Premier Sport TV is going to take up NASCAR. They haven't confirmed it yet. So we've got the big 500 race in a couple of weeks' time. And no definite television as far as I know. So I watched some highlights on YouTube this morning, and they were bang. It was Elliott came through to win it all in the end. Chase Elliott won the 200 lap. Bargy hargy. There was some pushing and shoving and bad tempers, but it was just for show. No points. This is just a little publicity only. So hopefully we'll get NASCAR on telly on Premier Sport.
So it's changing a little bit, isn't it? Because Eurosport is now going to TNT. So for those who watch any Eurosport,
I've given up. I've embarrassed myself on Twitter because Premier Sport became Viaplay, and then Viaplay went back to being Premier Sport. And they're all owned by someone else. And then there's Discovery that own Eurosport and TNT. So Discovery, TNT, Eurosport. Eurosport is going, apparently, and then all that has to go to TNT. So I don't know.
So where do we watch our motorsport?
However, when they confirm Premier Sport are going to do NASCAR, don't all complain, I can't afford that, it's put behind a paywall. I think I paid last year £12.99 a month, right?
Yeah.
And you get a NASCAR race every Sunday night. That's 4 races. That's £3 per race. And if you watch NASCAR and get involved in it for your £3 a week, I can assure you'll get addicted. There are bad, boring races. It does happen, as in any formula. There are some bad, boring races. I suggest recording it and then doing the old times 30.
I watched some last night with Oliver, my son, who's nearly 14, and he thought it was quite entertaining, but he couldn't. I don't think he could have watched a whole race. But he doesn't watch Formula One either. So, but he was fascinated with these big V8s rumbling around on the banked circuits.
And there's so many different tracks then. Road courses, quarter miles, half miles.
IndyCar, I think, is the one for me. Do you get IndyCar with that?
Much, but no, IndyCar's on Sky. It was last year.
Oh yeah, it was.
Sky F1.
Yeah, and I love the IndyCar where they do that 360 overtake move and the camera just moves. And you
They've
see
got about
how
29 cars, I think, this year they're up to. It's a huge field of IndyCar. Huge variety of drivers. Wonderful to watch.
What's coming up next week?
Nothing. I have it on my list, however, because we're all watching the Super Bowl from New Orleans. Can the Philadelphia Eagles, stop the Kansas City
Chiefs
from three-peating, not making a hat trick, three-peating the Super Bowl?
Well, your team is the who?
The Raiders. The Needell family are Raiders fans. And that's all that's on.
Well, we may get a guest. Maybe Harry.
Get a guest on for next week. We'll have news. There'll still be some gossip going around.
There'll still be lots to talk about.
And we can preview the Daytona 500. Daytona Beach, baby.
Thanks
and let you know if it's on Premier Sport and tell you to pay you £12.99.
And I'll let you know if there's a big crack on my phone as well, because it did fall over.